Joining me now to discuss the ongoing military operations there, retired Army Major John Spencer. He's also chair of Urban Warfare Studies at the Modern War Institute at West Point. Major Spencer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So given your expertise in urban warfare, we got a vision there from Nick's reporting of, well, the devastation from the aerial strikes and the battles on the ground to the civilian infrastructure there, and what the Israeli military claims is not just civilian infrastructure but used by Hamas. It's difficult. U.S. experience in Mosul and Fallujah, enormous amount of experience in similar urban warfare zones. How much more complicated does urban warfare become when there are civilians living in the midst of it? And you know, whether it's dual use, like a hospital where you had Hamas militants in it, I mean, there were patients as well. How difficult does that make the military's decisions and operations?
Extremely difficult. It's why it's the most complex, most difficult type of warfare you could ever ask a military to do, especially when you have a combatant like Hamas who uses those protected sites, which militaries cannot fire on unless they lose their protection. So Hamas actually commits war crimes by purposely using a protected site for military purposes.
I get that, but the U.S. has faced this before. It faced it with ISIS in Mosul, where, yes, ISIS and groups like Hamas, they hide behind civilians, but the U.S. military, as does the Israeli military, it has a positive responsibility to avoid civilian casualties. And I wonder, given the death toll above 10,000 now in Gaza, have the Israeli forces met that positive responsibility to reduce such casualties as much as possible?
Yeah, I personally think so, based on, again, studying even most recent battles, like the Battle of Mosul, which took 9 months to get 5,000 combatants out of a city of 1.4 million, with many of the civilians left in the population. That's why there are 10,000 civilian casualties and 10,000 Iraqi security forces casualties on their side. And most of the city was destroyed. So I know the feeling of thinking that this is indiscriminate, or some feeling that there's a better way to do this. Israel has taken beyond precautions. Over 1 million flyers dropped, 4 weeks of evacuations, daily now pauses. I mean, I understand the feeling, and every civilian casualty must be avoided, but there is no bloodless war, and especially a bloodless urban war.
Let me ask you this then. Is Israel's stated military goal of ending Hamas, is that achievable for however long it continues these operations? I mean, David Petraeus himself said this of U.S. military operations in Iraq, that the U.S., and I'm quoting him in here, is not going to kill our way out of all the problems in Iraq. He and others, Donald Rumsfeld famously said, are we, and I'm paraphrasing, but you know the statement, are we creating terrorists as much as we're killing them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, as I listen to the IDF's stated mission to destroy Hamas's current military capability, yes, it's very hard to kill an ideal, but you can definitely take. I served under General Petraeus at the Battle of Sadr City, where the goal was to stop rockets from hitting the green zone. It is a military task that can be accomplished. But the problem of Hamas is not Israel's only military problem. It's actually a much larger problem to this radical Islamic terrorist organization that will just continue to want to destroy Israel. But the military task of removing Hamas's military capability today or for decades is possible.
President Biden, he has acknowledged an extra burden for the IDF. He said in particular that hospitals should be protected. Now we saw Nick's reporting there, and there's been evidence that the IDF has presented that Hamas fighters have deliberately used hospitals to store weapons, to hide, to come in and out of tunnels, as we saw in his story there. Is there a particular responsibility around hospitals given their function?
Absolutely. They're protected sites. And this is why IDF have made the hospitals one of their primary objectives, bypassing many Hamas strong points in order to get to the hospital to protect them, because they are Hamas headquarters. This happened in the Battle of Mosul, and the U.S. military, it became a big deal, fired white phosphorus rounds to provide cover for the Iraqi security forces assaulting the main hospital, Mosul. This is what combatants like this, like Hamas, trying to use the hospital, but we'll do. And the fact that the IDF are moving on the hospitals first as a priority to protect them. And where are the calls for Hamas to evacuate these hospitals? So yes, they are special, and yes, they must be protected inordinately to other protected sites because of their vulnerability. But that you can't say that's not what the IDF are doing.
Major John Spencer, thanks so much for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you.